I love the Stampede that's up right now at Horns 24/7. Stampede's good every week, but I love when you and Hank dig into stuff like the 10 most wanted recruits for Texas in the class of 2025, because before we get into it, I think it's just worth mentioning with Jabbar Muhammad committing to Oregon, which you talked about that late last week, things were trending away from Texas in that one. Dude, the book's pretty much closed on 2024 with the addition of anybody that Texas might pick up in the portal after spring practice when the spring portal window opens. So, man, it's kind of weird, Jordan. We're just over a week, about 9 days away from signing day, and there's going to be a whole lot of nothing going on for Texas next Wednesday.
Yeah, no. Hank and I were talking yesterday, and we were trying to come up with a Stampede, man. Like, we're getting that time of the year where we got to start getting creative, So, not looking forward to the really slow parts of the off season, but we'll do what we can to make it as fun as possible. Of course, for 10 most wanted recruits, actually ended up being 11 guys, but because we kind of designated the tight end position as just like, here's one of these two guys is what we know about both of them.
Right.
But for all the other positions, we got them on there. So if you want to check it out and go ahead and look, I'm sure we're also going to talk about it. But like you said, man, unless someone really kind of comes from out of the blue, off the radar, they're pretty much done in the portal. And in 2024 recruiting, as of now, that's how it appears. Things can always change super quickly, especially in the portal nowadays. But at this point in time, unless it's a 2025 or 2026 or a high school recruit, we're not expecting any announcements to be made for Texas up until April, whenever that portal does open. We expect Texas to add at least one guy. So, and they're over the scholarship limit right now, so they're going to need it at least. So.
There's a couple of different things that I kind of want to talk about in relation to the portal, because it all kind of ties together, right? What position group can they add to? Who might be available? We don't know who's going to be available. But my thing is, Jordan, getting back to something we talked about, it's kind of now or never for guys at some positions, and it's three positions that I'm looking at. The offensive line, edge, and interior D-line. I know you say, well, how can you lose any interior D lineman? Well, I'll keep talking about it until spring ball starts. I think that trio of Jere Bledsoe, Aaron Bryant, and Zach Swanson, either they're going to rise to the occasion or they're going to get the hint after spring practice that you're probably not in the long-term plans. I think the same thing goes for guys like Justice Finkley, a guy like Jamon Tapp, even though I think both those guys are really good players. They brought in Trey Moore for a reason. They brought in Colin Simmons for a reason. Ethan Burke doesn't look like he's going anywhere. And we haven't even seen Colton Vosick on the field, really. So they're continuing to add depth at edge and in the offensive line. I mean, you can only have 5 on the field at a time. And when you've got just that glut of bodies, they got some really talented guys. There are going to be some really talented offensive linemen from this program that go into the portal after spring ball. It's just a fact. You're still going to be really good. You're still going to be deep, but man, it's a good problem to have. This is good attrition for Texas.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, like, as much as it's going to suck, they got to make room. And also at the end of the day, these guys got to decide what they want in their college football careers. And, does it stay, maybe get a damn good degree at the University of Texas, but, you don't play till senior night perhaps, or is it, transfer down to a Texas State, a ULM, maybe a Baylor, something like that, and, actually see the field. So that'll be some important conversations over the next few months that some guys need to have with them and their families and their circles. But, I mean, like you said, man, Texas is at the point where, I mean, you always you always want to be at the point where no matter what, you're playing the best player.
Yeah.
But Texas definitely goes by that. And, right now, the names you mentioned, they're likely not the best players of their position. They, chances are they're probably not ever going to be the best players of their position on this roster. That's why we're talking about them the way we are. But, I mean, it's a part of the offseason. Every school goes through it. It sucks, but, it's what college football is in 2024. So,
yeah. Now, I'm not saying the two guys I'm going to mention, I'm not saying they're transfer candidates, but I think
Yeah.
they're good hypotheticals to look at.
Oh, yeah.
Cole Hudson and Nato Umazalo, both those guys. Like, if those guys are anywhere else in the country, they're starting right now. No questions asked. Is it conceivable to think like I like the fact that those guys can keep pressure on Hayden Connor and DJ Campbell because, man, even though he's a senior and he's been a 2-year starter now, like let's say Hayden Connor doesn't have a great spring and NATO does or Hudson does, dude, if you're Kyle Flood, like you got to do what's best for the team, and you might have to say either that job is completely open or you might elevate a guy. So we're talking about it in terms of it might be bad for the guys further down the depth chart, but if the guys further down the depth chart rise up, I mean, you might have a guy that started for a couple of years that all of a sudden they end spring ball like, hey, man, I may need to bust it really, really bad, bust my hump this summer, or I might be on the bench. I might not be starting. Like Cole Hudson wound up in that group because of DJ Campbell. Like you talk about a guy that is a true freshman, started 13 games at right guard, and was a backup last year. So it's, again, it goes back to being a really good problem to have if you're Texas, specifically if you're Kyle Flood, talking about the offensive line. I love that you've got talent. Finally, Jordan, you've got talent and depth in that offensive line room. And you're not kicking guys off the team. Guys aren't showing up to campus just overweight and sloppy, and you can't count on them for a couple years. Like, you got dudes that understand the deal and are coming to campus ready to rock and roll. I love where this offensive line is.
Yeah. Everything you said, I agree with. I don't know if you saw your comments. Some paparazzi was out there. Not paparazzi, but you were spotted.
Yeah, Coach 420. No, look, anytime you see me out in Gen Pop, man, don't be shy to come up and say hi. It's all good. Coach 420 mentions that he and his daughter were at the basketball game on Saturday. That's the first time I've been to the Moody Center as a spectator. And where we got our seats, I think we're like section 108. And like you enter through the Dell Technologies Club, and I'm like, surely we're not entering through the club level, right? But that's where our seats were. And I'm like, all right, this is nice, man. You got some good food options and whatnot. Again, I'm just kind of old school. I don't like paying $5 for my 20-ounce Coke Zero, but such is life. But hey, my daughter had a great time, man. Like I said, dude, $45 got, with parking and everything, got myself, my wife, and my daughter in the door. So it was fun. Good times had by all on the family front on Saturday. Jordan, what did you do on Saturday? Imagine you probably got some rest finally, right?
So Dallas Friday after we got off, drove to Dallas. Juice had a tournament there this weekend, and it was originally scheduled to be in Arlington. It rained, or it had been raining the last few days leading up to the tournament, only a turf field. So tournament was moved to Eaton High School. I was staying in Grand Prairie because it was only 10 minutes from where the fields are supposed to be.
Yeah.
That got moved. I told myself going into the weekend that I was only going to be there on Saturday if there wasn't enough talent there for me. Because with it being a big visit weekend, all the top guys are there visits. There's also every year, the last weekend of January, there's a big tournament in Miami called Battle Miami Tournament. Yeah. So all the national teams and top 7-on-7 teams will load up with all the top state of Texas players. So the cupboard was pretty dry this weekend at the tournament. And Saturday, I looked around and I was like, nah. And then after Juice was done, I just drove back to Austin on Saturday. And because, in bracket play, I don't want to talk bad about them, but they're usually pretty rough the first tournament of the year. So I'm like, if any of these teams wins, like, congrats to them. But I doubt we'll take it home. So that was my weekend. And then yesterday, kind of just sat on the couch and enjoyed some playoff football. So.
Yeah, it happens. I get that with camps. Used to get that with camps sometimes back in the day. Like the camp deal, it's more organized now because now you've either got private workouts where the trainer will tell you, hey, these are the guys that are going to be there. And the trustworthy ones, when they tell you somebody's going to be there, they're there. Or they'll tell you, hey, he's got a basketball tournament or whatever. He's got a graduation for a cousin or something. He's out of town, but he might make it late or whatever. But camps, it was a little more wheels off, Jordan, when I was doing it, where somebody would tell you, oh, yeah, so-and-so's going to show up, and you go and there's nobody there that's like a Texas, Oklahoma, A&M, LSU level kid. Or, I mean, there was the rare camp that like, they're like, well, I mean, you could come. We don't know who's showing up. And then you show up and it's like, oh, man, there's like, at the time it would have been, there's 4 or 5 like BCS conference level dudes out here. Like I went to, I think it was a Schumann's underclassmen combine in Somerset, which is kind of a drive. This was many years ago. And I show up, I'm not really knowing who's going to be out there. And like the first 2 guys that show up for registration were Arion Springs, who was a safety out of San Antonio that ended up signing with Oregon, and then Derek Roberson, who signed with Texas in 2014 and ended up at Sam Houston and then ended up getting a cup of coffee with the Titans. I was like, well, I mean, 2 dudes on the board for Texas, so it kind of worked out. But yeah, I totally get that when you show up and you're like, yeah, things don't change in about the next 20 minutes. I'm out of here.
Yeah, it was just like 40 degrees and windy, and I was just like, this ain't worth it. So, and like, man, I go to a ton of 7-on-7 tournaments, and most of the time it's pretty much the same mix of kids and organizations. So, like, I'm going to see them all later in the spring.
Yeah.
But it was weird, though. It's messed up my whole sense of timing because that's the first time I've ever left a tournament early and not stayed through Sunday. So, driving home on 35 and getting home, like, damn, it feels like a Saturday or a Sunday. Like, I'm waiting for Sunday Night Football to come on, but I don't know what to do with myself these last few hours. So,
yeah, it's kind of, we're getting into that time. I didn't, because I was at the women's game. I didn't watch any of the men's game on Saturday. I just kept kind of checking it on my phone and saw halftime. I was like, all right, things are looking good in Provo. And then about 15 minutes later, things were not looking good in Provo. So Texas and Houston tonight out at Moody Center. We'll see if the Longhorns fourth consecutive game facing an AP top 25 team. So we'll see how things go for Rodney Terry and company tonight. But Jordan, I want to get to this the top 20, your 10 most wanted for 2025. Decorium Moore is the first name listed. And over the weekend, I know Steve Wiltfong caught up with him. He still committed to LSU, but he mentioned the 2 schools he's keeping the door open for are Oregon and Texas. If you had to handicap this thing right now, I know Hank wrote the blurb on Decorium Moore for the Stampede, but if you had to handicap this thing, like what percentage chance would you give Texas right now if you wanted to put a percentage on it that they could flip Decorium Moore from LSU?
Well, shit, man.
I know I'm putting you on the spot, but
honestly, I gotta go 50%.
Okay.
We got about a 4 year till he's got to sign. I think Oregon is a very legit contender, but the only school I could really see him committing to if he was to open it up, decommit or flip from LSU would be Texas. I don't know. It wouldn't, unless Oregon has a great season on the field this upcoming season.
Yeah.
Then that would really surprise me. I really think that if he does end up backing out of his commitment to LSU, that it'd be for Texas and only Texas. So, and with it's kind of weird because the last few years, man, I've been talking about how great this 2025 wide receiver class is in Texas because it's just super stacked.
Yeah.
And Texas went out and took like 5 receivers in 2024, right? So numbers are going to be smaller than I'd originally anticipated for the position, but, that's fine. Whenever you need less guys, it means you have more time to focus on your number one guy, and that's exactly what's going on. And the number one guy is Decorium Moore. So liking Texas' chances whenever they have a number one guy across the board, I really feel like if you go back and look at these last few classes and you really think, okay, who did this staff identify as the guy in the class? Not at a position, not positional value, but just like who is this big name that everyone knows we're kind of tied to that we have to land no matter what. We can't miss him.
Yeah.
In 2022, I think it was Kelvin Banks / DJ Campbell, kind of both those guys. It's good that they got them both. 23, obviously Arch Manning. Anytime there's a Manning name, he's going to be the guy. And then 24, I'd say Colin Simmons. So, and even though Colin, didn't finish as the highest ranked guy, even though Kelvin or DJ or whatnot. I know DJ was ranked higher than Kelvin by us. They're still the guy, and they're still it's bigger than just the ranking. It's more like more kind of a self-respect thing. Like Texas doesn't land Colin Simmons. Some people are like, damn, Texas got stuffed in a locker by LSU for the top kid in state. You know what I mean? People say stuff like that. It builds up. It really does build up. And I think, Texas showing that they can land their number one guy whenever they identify someone as the number one guy. It gives me confidence in that. And also, they have a year left to flip this guy. He obviously committed in August of 23. Kind of an out of the blue commitment. Didn't tell anyone until like an hour before and held this quick get together party so that it wouldn't leak out. So it's kind of some interesting things that went on for him committing so early, so out of the blue. To where it really felt like this is far from over. And it's kind of had that same feeling throughout. He hasn't taken a ton of visits, but with his mother originally hailing from Austin, I'm not sure what part of the city she's from or what area of the city she's from, but I know she's originally from Austin, and he has a lot of family ties to the area. So I think that's important as well. It's also the only in-state school he's ever truly considered. I know he's visited A&M and SMU and all that, but Texas is the only in-state school for DeCorian. So that's, I guess, pretty much the latest there.